Good morning, Jeff. It is Overreaction Monday, brought to us by the good people of RogueShop.com. Using that promo code Orange Bloods. Catch, tis the season, right? It is the season to not only do for yourself, do for others. I can't think of a better gift, not only for yourself or for others, than the Rogue Shop.
No, you're right. And look, if you go right now, so Rogue Shop's in a voting, like they're in a contest for best CBD retailer. If you go there, take to the link that we'll send out, and it's on Orange Bloods. If you want to, if you're on Orange Bloods, take a picture that shows that you voted and DM it to Richard, and they'll give you a 20% off discount off at RogueShop.com. So all you got to do is make a vote for Rogue, and you get 20% off. They're paying you to vote, and you can check out the new edibles. They've got a lot of things going on. They've got an edibles advent calendar, which absolutely makes for a great Christmas gift.
That's an amazing Christmas gift.
I'm going to order me some carts this week. So I gave my mom all of my gummies this weekend. So the Ketchum family is well represented.
That is the advent calendar is what got me. Like, I gotta like, here, kids, here's yours, and here's daddy and mommy's, like that in itself is fantastic. I'm just imagining. I gotta order that now. Now that you said it, in between stuff, I've definitely got to order it. Catch, happy Monday to you. There we have so many topics. I didn't talk about A&M yet, and I'm sure we could get to that at some point. But A&M's got a new coach. Houston's got rid of Holgerson, which is to a lesser degree. But more importantly, Texas. Catch, like, we have not done a show in a while where we were talking about Texas going to the Big 12 championship as the top seed, as the top dog, where we had a weekend, Catch, where you and I were able to sit back on Saturday and watch games and seeing, okay, well, who will Texas face? And then who could they face in the future if all goes well? I don't know what your overreaction is. My overreaction is, like Ice Cube said, today's a good day. But what do you got, Catch?
Oh, I think one of my first overreaction. There's so many topics. So, I might be a 6-shooter today with bang, bang, bang. Like, I might just go all morning with hot takes. I think Texas fans got to get over the Oregon thing. That at this point, Oregon doesn't really matter for Texas. The winner of the Washington-Oregon game is getting in. It's that simple. It's that simple. You can complain about Oregon being ranked ahead of Texas. You can talk about apples to oranges with regards to the Texas Tech game and scheduling. You can do it till you're blue in the face. It is chilly outside today. Is it chilly in Austin? It's like 41 degrees in the Woodlands.
Yep, it's about the same.
Oregon doesn't matter. What matters this weekend, number one, is that Texas wins their first Big 12 championship in half a generation. I desperately need the Rudolphos of the world, the Oscars of the world, who are like, I was 7 years old back in 2009. I need them to be able to say that during their lifetimes, they know what it feels like to see Texas win a Big 12 championship. First and foremost, that's on the agenda. The second piece on the agenda is Texas needs Florida State to lose. You can get your head lost in the weeds. Oh, why is Oregon ranked in it? Even if Oregon was ranked behind Texas right now, they'd move ahead if they beat Washington this weekend. It's a massive game. It's going to be, depending on how the committee shakes it up, 4 versus 5, 3 versus 5. The winner of that game is getting in. Texas needs a 5.5 underdog in Louisville to beat Florida State. If Texas wins and Florida State loses, Texas is in. And you don't have to worry about, then you can just watch the rest of the games competitively from a who do we match up with in the playoffs, and what might it look like if it's Oregon versus Michigan? Who should we root for? There's a lot that you can look at, but right now it seems pretty simple to me. Win your game Saturday morning and then root for Louisville on Saturday when that game is over with, because that's the pathway. Everything else is wasting energy and breath.
100% with you. And it was interesting watching, the Florida State game and with against, Florida over the weekend, thinking to yourself, like, is Florida really going to be able to do this? Can Florida kind of pull this thing off? Florida State, obviously, that, Florida gets to learn what it's like to play with a backup quarterback as well. They're like, oh, this ain't that fun. Like, we get it, right? And so, but Florida State ends up, kind of pulling this thing off, Catch. And you're right, it does become the two-parters, which is, first of all, Texas has to handle their business this weekend, right? And they've got to, do what they need, whatever it is, like, whether it's 1 point, 2 points, 21 points, who cares? Just win.
They don't need style points.
No, they just need to win. That's it, right? I mean, just win. Like this, because style points won't help you, in this equation. Now here's a question though, Catch, because I asked Aaron about this. The style points help if chaos ensues.
Of course.
In chaos is Alabama somehow beating Georgia in the championship game, and now all of a sudden chaos is here, right? Is that your chaotic path, I guess, for lack of better terms?
Well, it won't be chaotic if Florida State also loses.
Mm-hmm.
Where things are going to get chaotic potentially is if it's chalk across the board, except in the SEC championship game. I believe, forget about whether it's right or wrong. Forget about whether or not Texas will have a great injustice done against it should chaos ensue. I have a very hard time believing that the two-time undefeated, reigning national champions, the no doubt about it, clear number one in the eyes of the committee, it's just hard for me to believe that they'll drop them to 5. Now, what does that mean for Texas? I'm not even thinking about it from a Texas perspective. I'm thinking about it from the pollsters yesterday, and I know that they're just pollsters and they're not the same people as the committee, but the pollsters and the committee have mostly been in sync so far with regards to the order of the teams, who the teams are at the top of the rankings. They struggled to drop Ohio State too far, right? A couple of weeks ago, Ohio State was number 1. They were either number 2 or 3 this past weekend. They lose. They wouldn't put them all the way behind Alabama or Texas for that matter. I look at Georgia and I just wonder, is the committee really going to punish the two-time defending national champions who were 12-0? They're not going to leave an SEC team out. Like, there's just a lot to point to that an Alabama win. I don't know that means Alabama's in. I think it may mean that Georgia's the number 4 seed, because here's what's not going to happen. The committee chairman is not going to do an interview next Sunday night and talk about the 4 teams that they put in. And then he gets asked, who do you think is the best team in college football? And they go, well, we think the best team, we rank number 5. They're not going to do it. If they truly believe Georgia is the best team in the country, and I think they do, there's never been a scenario in the history of the rankings where 1 has fallen to 5, let alone 1 falling to 5 when they're the two-time defending national champions who are on one hell of a run. So the SEC is not getting left out, because then I think most of the country, those that don't have skin in the game, would go, well, these aren't even the 4 best teams. You can't have a college football playoff without an SEC team based on the history of the playoff, which has been dominated by the SEC. It won't make a lot of people happy, but the dynamics involved. Look, if you're Texas, just root for Georgia. Just make it easy. Alabama's not helping you any longer. In fact, I would argue Alabama hasn't helped your ass at all. Like you can say schedule of strength until you're blue in the face. The committee hasn't cared. They haven't. So root for Georgia, ignore the Pac-12, win your game this weekend, and no, you need Florida State. Because the thing is, I got into an argument with somebody on Orange Bloods last night where they were like, the easiest pathway is if Alabama just beats Georgia. And I'm like, no, it's not as simple as that. It's not like, oh, well, then Texas will have beaten Alabama, and that's the team that beat Georgia, and Texas will just go in. That is not how the committee is going to look at it. And I'm not saying that Texas won't get in if Alabama beats Georgia. It's possible. But what I'm telling you is it is way more complicated than, oh, well, Alabama wins that game, and because Texas beat Alabama, they'll just stay ahead of both of them. I don't think it's that easy. And I think Ohio State is a really good example of that. And it will be curious to see what the committee does with Ohio State this weekend or on Tuesday. If they slot them in front of Texas, look, I fully expect that Texas would jump them with a championship win this weekend, right? Though in the final rankings, I do think they would clear Ohio State. But if they don't drop Ohio State back below Texas and Alabama this week, I think it gives you a better idea of what would happen if Michigan, well, maybe not Michigan, but if Georgia were to lose, would they really plummet all the way out? I do have my doubts.
Aaron, could you, because just for the visual for what Ketch was talking about, could you put up those polls so we can just have the visual? And again, we know the polls come out obviously on Tuesday night, the ones that matter. But Ketch is not incorrect when he does say, "Hey, it's pretty similar." And like to your point, Ketch, if you look at where the coaches poll or anything to that effect, Ohio State loses. But then they still kind of land in a sweet spot. Obviously, again, this is not the one that counts, but they land in that sweet spot between Oregon and Ohio State. So they dropped 4, right? And
it wasn't really close either on where Ohio State has a fairly healthy lead over Texas. If you look at the AP, they've got a 46 vote lead. Only about 64 people vote. So they have a dominant. That means the average that comes out to about 50 plus voters put Ohio State ahead of Texas, where only about 10 put Texas ahead of Ohio State. That's a lot. Okay. If the committee's a reflection of that, then I think you shouldn't be surprised tomorrow night if it happens. Just don't freak out. Texas will move up ahead of Ohio State should they win the Big 12. The issue is they just need Florida State to lose as well, and that could easily happen. I think we all get that Florida State is way more vulnerable than they would be without Jordan Travis.
Yeah, and the thing is, Ketch, one of the things that is very interesting, and like to your point, and one of the things I've said on my shows, and one of the things I've said here is I still can't forget, Ketch. It's hard for me to take out of my head that TCU last year lost in the Big 12 championship game, and the committee didn't penalize them for that. Like they viewed it as, hey, it can't happen in a conference championship game. Things happen, but you know what? You had a really good season, so you know what? You get to stay in at 4, and then they end up getting kind of semi-rewarded for it because they go out and beat Michigan. Now they get blasted, obviously, in the national championship game. But it didn't look totally foolish by that move. To your point, when I look at the Georgia, yeah, how far if that happens? How far does that drop happen? Yeah, I'm with you. You don't want Alabama beating Georgia in an upset. You just want Georgia to handle their business, do what they need to do. Like you said, Michigan will dominate Iowa. Like that is what it is. What'd you say, Aaron? It's a 23-point favorite, something like that, 23. So we already know that's where it is. Like to your point, Washington or Oregon, one of those two teams are getting in. And like to your point,
have you seen the spread for the Pac-12 championship game?
I did not. What is it?
It's Oregon by 8.5.
Wow.
Like, if you want to know why the committee,
Yeah.
because even Vegas thinks that Oregon is a touchdown plus favorite on a neutral site against an undefeated Washington. Like, everybody respects Oregon except Texas fans.
Well, and Aaron, you have that, right? Do you have the spreads? Did I send you that? Here, this is where the spreads. Brett McMurphy had this, and so here are the conference title odds that Brett McMurphy put out there. To your point, Oregon 9.5 versus Washington, Texas 12.5 versus Oklahoma State, Georgia 5.5 versus Bama, and FSU 4.5 versus Louisville, Michigan 23.5 versus Iowa. Does anything else stand out to you, Catch, as far as these spreads are concerned?
I think Florida State's not getting enough respect against a Louisville team that just lost to Kentucky. Like, I know Florida State's got the quarterback issue, but the rest of that Florida State team is really good.
Yeah.
They got dudes everywhere. They've got playmakers at the skill positions. They've got linemen. They're good on defense. And they're man for man, they're better than Louisville. So if I was a betting man, I actually might take a very motivated both those teams will Florida State play motivated, or will they play pressured? I wonder if it doesn't feel like all season long any of these top 8 teams have felt pressure. I wonder if on championship weekend we see it. To me, that a tight Florida State team is potentially problematic for themselves. But if they come out and play, they're better than Louisville. They just are. And consequently, Texas 12.5, Oklahoma State, that's probably about right. I think Oregon and Washington is going to be a last possession of the game affair. So I actually think Oregon and, I would take Washington and the points at that. I think Oregon may win the game, but I think Washington will keep that thing. That's going to be like 37-35 either way.
Washington looked looked a little vulnerable over the weekend, though. Catch there was, of course, there's the weird. They said a weird thing with Penix, like where someone you see the security guy by him and he doesn't want to look. And then after the game, after the win, they've got a jacket over his head covering his face as they escort him out. It was like the weirdest reaction to a win I think I've seen. You
know what it is, though? And I lied. Washington is the team that you can see feeling some pressure because they remind me of the 2008 or the 2009 Texas Longhorns in that there's so much pressure. Like, Penix comes back for another year. That they've been national championship or playoff or bust. And you know how when Texas wins, guys are in the locker room dancing. I don't even know what the dances are that they're doing in the locker room, but they're having a good old time.
Yes.
Texas is playing free and easy and having fun. Washington looks like football games are shaving years off their lives. And I saw it with Texas in 2009. Even when they blew people out, it felt they weren't having fun, because the only fun can be if you make it to the championship game. When that's the reality of your situation, it makes some of these games, especially if you haven't been there before, I think Washington is just feeling the pressure. I wonder if the best thing that can happen to them is that now they're an underdog. Not only are they an underdog, Vegas is telling them, we think you guys kind of suck. Double-digit underdogs to a team they already beat.
Yes.
I think the psychology might actually help Washington this weekend. But I historically, these moments cause teams to crater. I mean, I can point to teams from the last decade all over the place that look like they were in line to make the playoff, but the pressure gets to them. And so far, it hasn't resulted in losses for any of these 8 teams. So I really tip my cap to all of them. But I think of the 8, some of these are playing with a little more house money than others. Texas not playing with house money in the Big 12 championship game, but a little bit with regards to the playoffs. If Washington loses this weekend to Oregon, they'll have gone 12-0. They'll be 12-1 on the season, and it will be viewed as a massive disappointment. And that's hard on the nerves.
Yes. But on the flip side, though, Catch, I think Oregon, for the most part, outside of the USC game, Catch, Oregon they beat Utah 35-6, and Utah was ranked 13th in the country. They smashed California 63-19. They get the win versus USC 36-27. They obliterate Arizona State, not a good team, 49-13, and then they beat Oregon State 31-7. Like they're more loose. Like they are more loose. Like, to your point, like, I felt like they're built differently. Their mentality is built differently. I think we saw it in that Colorado game earlier this year. We realized that Colorado's not all that, but we saw that Oregon can get focused and say, you know what, it's time to go out here and kick some ass. Like, we'll do that, and we'll have no problems with that. And and then, to your point, but we see Washington last week, and it was just like, it's almost like the weight of the world is on their shoulder. And now it's cool, but then when you actually have to get in that seat, and now all the pressure's on you, things change. Scottie Pippen, it was great when he was playing with Michael Jordan. Sure, became a lot different when he had to run his own team. He might be like, well, they had 55 wins, but that being said, when they said, like, we're gonna go to Tony Kukoc, you're like, well, I ain't gonna go in the game. Like, the pressure starts to mount, and I think that's what's happening with Washington. And especially to the point where they're like, I can't imagine going in and being is having a success. Think about being undefeated and then being nearly a 10-point dog in a game. Like, that's
insulting.
That's how much this is what they think about you. Like, if there was ever a diss song, this would be like Tupac, Hit 'Em Up. All right, we had some super chats that came in as well while we were talking. So let's go ahead and knock some of those out. He's going for the corner, says, I need Yormark handing Texas the Big 12 trophy. Like, I need air to live. I want to see his blank eating grin when he does it. Beat Okie Light is what he says. And we'll talk about that, Catch. We'll transition into the Oklahoma State conversation as well. So he's going for the corner. We're going to transition to that in a second.
Can I give everybody another hot take?
Yeah.
Everybody needs to let the Yormark thing go. Like,
no!
It's not that big of a deal.
No.
Oh my God, the commissioner of the Big 12 pandered to an audience of his constituency. The shock and the horror. Look, I get it. But for me, winning a championship trumps shoving it in his face. Like, that's an amazing byproduct of winning, but I can't imagine the focus. If you're a Texas fan this weekend, it just needs to be on getting a ring. It needs to be on ending 14 seasons of futility. It needs to be going into the SEC on the same kind of high that Texas came into the Big 12 with all those years ago. It shouldn't be. I'm just saying, it shouldn't be anywhere close to the number one, like, area of focus going into Saturday. If it can be on the list, like, I can remember when I was a kid, I'd make a Christmas list. The top thing on the list isn't the same thing as the sixth thing on the list, but I might have 12 things on the list. Like, I don't know. I'll give you an example. I kind of love this team. Like, they've won me over as guys. They're fun. There's so many good stories. Seeing them rewarded, to me, to see that happiness from that group of guys, to me, that's way more in my focus. I feel like Yormark got it. He's going to get it. Trust me, he'll get it. But, like, be big, be a little bit bigger and better than that.
Nah. Don't be bigger. Don't be better. Be yourself. Be petty. My dream. I want Texas when they get the championship trophy, right? And your marks get ready, don't boo. Like, don't boo. Booing's too easy. I need a chant of SEC, SEC, SEC throughout the building in Arlington. That's what
from a group of fans that swore they would never do that.
That's what we need. That's what I am calling for every Texas fan. After your uncle is telling you, is suggesting to you, don't boo. Booing's too easy. A chant of SEC, SEC. Let that ring throughout the building in Arlington. That's what needs to happen.
I love that Anwar wants pettiness, but not just any old pettiness. He wants controlled pettiness.
Yeah. Yes. Go wake up on Saturday morning, get your petty toothpaste, take a petty shower, comb or brush your petty hair, shave your petty head if you don't have any, put on your petty clothes, get your petty attitude, go in there and be as petty as you want to be.
Fair enough. I'm saying be petty. Just it shouldn't be the number one motivating factor. That's all I'm saying.
It shouldn't be. Number two. So Barb says, I'm sure I chatted about this happening like 4 weeks ago. How is it that certain programs, for example, Ohio State, Bama, don't drop as much as others when they lose? Shouldn't it be worse losing late? I think isn't it on depending on who you lose to?
Well, you just mentioned one of the two things, right? It's who you lose to, and they respect those programs a lot. Like Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia, if Georgia were to lose this weekend, is the ultimate example of that. They're the two-time undefeated reigning champions. Like, they're going to get respect. You know who they're going to get more respect? They'll get more respect than Washington will. Mm-hmm. They're going to get more respect than Florida State. Florida State loses this weekend. Nobody's going to say, yeah, but like, would they have lost a game? No. The respect is reserved for the programs who have truly earned it. And I think there's 3 in the country that have truly earned it. Because I think Michigan would be behind Alabama had they lost this weekend. They're dying to punish Michigan, but they can't do it while they're undefeated. But I think Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, those 3 teams are like treated differently. And I don't know that that's wrong. Like, they keep winning the national championships. So, you know, I get it. You don't have to like it, but I think it should be easy to understand.
And I think the other thing too, Catch, that if we're just gonna have an honest conversation like that, I think Texas fans have to remember is that Texas kind of effed around with some teams that they should have blown out a little earlier this year, and that plays a part. Like the Houston, needing life or death against Houston, like they remember that life or death versus a K-State. They remember that TCU. Like that happened as well. So, there are some games where Texas, if they do what they did versus Texas Tech against some of those other programs, so be it. But when you're pissing around with some teams that aren't even going to be bowl eligible, like that's kind of that works against you as well. So Barbs, you have to factor all those things into the equation.
This is slightly different than what we're talking about, but I think one of the things that very quietly has happened to Texas that undermines a Texas argument for a lot of things is that their resume is weaker today than it was a couple of weeks ago because Kansas and Kansas State have both fallen out of the top 25s. Now, the playoff top 25 hasn't come out yet. So it's possible that one of those two teams could be sitting at 25, but there's a very good chance that come Tuesday night, Texas will have one top 25 win, and it'll be a hell of a win. It'll be against Alabama. But the thing that it had been saying for the last few weeks was that Oregon doesn't have any top 25 wins, and we've got 3. Well, today 3 has become 1, and again, Oregon I don't think is really the competition because look, if Washington wins, they're going to have 2 wins over an Oregon team that the committee loves, and if Oregon wins that game, they'll then have the win over Washington, which will counteract the Texas win over Alabama. I mean, they'll essentially be same-ish. You'll have wins over a one-loss team that will be ranked outside the top 4. So it will virtually be a tie in terms of who would have the best win at that point. I think that Texas really needed Kansas and Kansas State to just stay in the top 25. But Kansas State loses at home to Iowa State this past weekend, knocks them out of the top 25. Kansas has had a little bit of a rough go of it at the end of the season. So in the end, Texas has 1 great win, 1 okay loss, but there's not a whole lot on top of that. I mean, the win over Kansas State and Kansas is really no different than a win over Utah or Oregon State for those Pac-12 teams. They're all kind of in the mush. And Texas needed, in order to say our resume is light years better than Oregon or anybody else's, they needed those other Big 12 teams to be really good. They probably needed Oklahoma to be in this game. Texas gets nothing from beating Oklahoma State. It's an Oklahoma State team that lost by a combined 68 points to directional schools from the state of Alabama and Florida. It's unfortunate, but I think if you really wanted to make a dent this weekend with your performance, it needed to be against a team like Oklahoma that's got more street cred than Oklahoma State does.
We had a couple more super chats that came in. He said Bama versus USF also happened. Well, I mean, but Texas is clearly one. They're ranked ahead of Bama as far as that is concerned. But that being said, if you're going to go into what Ketch is saying, Bama's also had a lot of other victories that will resonate when it's all said and done. They've got victories against Ole Miss. They have victory against Tennessee. They went out and smashed LSU. They beat, a Kentucky team. So they're also going to point to a lot of the quality wins that they have. They still don't have 1 loss, and again, they're right behind them. And don't also forget with the USF game, they also didn't have the starting quarterback in that game either.
Well, but every team in the country's had a game that, Oregon, Texas Tech, which I think Texas fans, for context, when you do the side-by-side comparison, the one thing you can't forget when we talk about Texas and Oregon both playing Texas Tech, and look, I'm not trying to be an Oregon defender. I want Texas in the playoff. Holy shit. We got a promotion at orangebloods.com going on right now. You know what would make people sign up for Orange Bloods and watch more Orange Bloods live videos? Being in the playoff. So don't think this is like me being a champion of Oregon, which would go against all of my own self-interests, including the fact that, I just would rather Texas be in the playoff. But Oregon played Texas Tech in September in Lubbock against Texas Tech's number 1 quarterback, QB1. Texas ends up getting Texas Tech later in the year at home against their QB2. I'm not saying that head-to-head isn't worth something. I'm just saying that the two things aren't exactly the same. And every team that's in this discussion, Texas had Houston, Texas had TCU, Alabama had South Florida, Michigan had Maryland a couple of weeks ago. Georgia just played Georgia Tech to a pretty close game. They won by 8. Every team in this discussion has had a game or two where they've won, but maybe not won impressively. I think everybody's got that hole on their resume. It's hard to me for a Texas fan to go, yeah, but Alabama and South Florida. And it's Texas and Houston and even in that instance, Texas is playing with its backup quarterback. So I just think that context really matters in these discussions.
Well, yeah. And it it was it was 10, what was it? 10-10 catch versus Wyoming heading into the fourth quarter with Texas.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're undefeated, you don't have to worry about style points a whole lot. If you have a loss, it's more of a thing that you have to talk about. Like Florida State doesn't have to worry about the fact that they probably should have lost to Boston College. They're undefeated. They're undefeated.
Yeah.
Texas is in more of a beauty pageant because of their one loss. You know, I mean, that's probably the way it should be. Like, do I think Florida State would beat Texas if they played on a neutral or on any field right now? Probably not. But I think being undefeated in a major conference, and look, they've pounded a lot of teams too. I think someone got mad at me earlier today where I was like, well, look, LSU's 13th in the country. Alabama's 8th. Now, I do think that there's a bit of a divide between 8 and 13. But if we're talking about top 15 teams, Texas beat Alabama on the road against Alabama by 10. And Florida State on a neutral field beat number 13 LSU by 21. I'm not saying those two things are the same thing, but they're closer than they are radically different. I mean, a 3-touchdown win on a neutral field against the number 13 team in the country, that's a feather in your cap. And I don't think you can just forget that because Florida State doesn't have their starting. I would say this. If Texas lost Quinn Ewers to an injury now, and let's say they were 12-0, and they lost their quarterback the very end of the season, and then they were punished because of that, Texas fans would never forget that. Like, on some level, we all need to acknowledge that if Florida State goes undefeated, they're undefeated. It is. Yeah. Undefeated teams don't get ranked behind teams with one loss unless it's Georgia. Only case that's going to happen. And look, here's my hot take, Anwar. You want my hot take?
Yes.
If Georgia loses and Florida State wins, Georgia won't be the 4 seed in the playoff. Georgia will be the 3 seed because the committee is not going to leave Florida State out, but they are not going to rank Florida State in its current form ahead of Georgia in a 14 playoff. They're not going to do an interview because they're going to get asked, do you think Florida State is better than Georgia? And they're not going to say yes. And because of that, they won't move Georgia below. So if Georgia loses, Texas really needs Florida State to lose, in my opinion, because I think at that point it would be Michigan 1, Pac-12 champion 2, Georgia 3, Florida State 4.
So you think if Alabama won, you still don't think they would get in?
No.
Oh, wow. Well, now that's Overreaction Monday. Now we're cooking with grease.
I don't think they're dropping. I don't think Alabama moves in. I think Georgia moves down just a couple of spots. And I think they'll say, we're not going to, the committee sometimes looks at these championship games as punishments for teams. Oh, a team has to play another team twice, or, a team should be rewarded for going 12-0. And then you punish them because of the extra game. The committee makes this shit up as they go. So trust me, on Sunday night, they could say all kinds of things to justify whatever it is that they do. But I can't imagine a world where they rank Georgia below an undefeated Florida State simply because that committee thinks Georgia is much, much, much better than Florida State. So I think they will box themselves into a problem.
You would have 2 conference champions left out. You would have a Big 12 champion left out and the SEC champion left out in that scenario. Just getting in, obviously, Michigan. So you have Michigan in, Georgia in, Washington or Oregon State, and then FSU. Now that's chaos at that point.
Yes, it is chaos.
Now that's basically, dropping the grenade and walking away at that point. That if they did something like that, Catch, well, I mean, their only saving grace is next year they'll have 12 teams. But at that point, then the criteria for whatever, there needs to be something more etched in stone if that's the case, because
they'll tell you their goal is to get the 4 best teams in the playoff. That's their goal. And I think Georgia's in right now. I think they're in. It would be unprecedented for the number 1 team, especially one who's a 2-time defending champion, to be completely left out when the committee deep down believes they're the best team in college football.
Well, I think if that's the case, then Texas doesn't make it in.
They need Florida State to lose.
No,
that is the pathway.
Now, Catch, even if Florida State lose, doesn't that open the door more for Bama than it does? Because at that point, they're just saying F it to any kinds of rules and regulations, right?
Well, they do that all the time. Like, there are no rules. The committee has no rules or regulations. 1 week, it's strength of schedule. The next week, we're going to go with the eyeball test. The next week, the committee shapes their decisions based on how they want to shape it. And they figure out what they want to do, and then they justify it later. Because the thing is, you can justify it in about 15 different ways.
Can the committee do that to Alabama and Nick Saban?
I think the loss to Texas is why it becomes really problematic for Alabama. Is that, it's the reason why Alabama's been stuck. Alabama's been playing better football than Texas for the last 2 months. And they've beaten better teams in the last 2 months. So not only are they playing better teams, and beating those teams more decisively than Texas is beating lesser teams at the same time, but they have respected that head-to-head. I think as it relates to Alabama and Texas, I don't know, because they're going to go this weekend. Alabama's going to be 8. So I really think it would then come down to, are we really going to leave the SEC out? Really? Really? If you think the SEC gets completely left out, I disagree with you. And the best way to keep a team from the SEC in is not to move Alabama ahead of a bunch of teams, including one that it lost to. It's saying, we think Georgia's the best team in the country. We're not going to punish them to such a degree that if they lose on championship Saturday, they go from a strong number 1 all the way down to 5. Now, dartboard, if that happens, then UGA's out. If we're talking about a double-digit Alabama win, nobody survives a double-digit loss. So that would be the caveat.
That I just see it in that scenario. If nothing applies, so then the question is, so on that, if FSU loses, Georgia loses, FSU loses, right? But Georgia stays in. I mean, if that's the case, then what becomes more valuable? An Alabama team that beat the number 1 team in the country, but you can't really play it because then it's a conference championship game. I guess. I mean, does Alabama get rewarded for winning a conference title when Georgia wouldn't get penalized for losing that much?
I think they would say Georgia's been penalized. They're no longer the 1 seed.
Yeah.
If the committee was really willing to elevate Alabama into the top 4 if they beat Georgia, they would maneuver Alabama in advance of the game. Let's watch what happens with Ohio State. Because again, Alabama's got to climb over how many teams to get in with a win over Georgia. They've got to climb over 4 teams. And the committee has at this point not showed they're willing to elevate Alabama quite like that. I think there's two different sets of, I think Georgia will get a level of respect. And yes, Chris, of course, Texas will have an argument. And I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I can be wrong. Hell, what time is it? I call that Monday. Yes, Texas will have all kinds of arguments. My argument is I think the committee thinks Georgia is by far and away the best team. And I think that it will be very hard for them to drop them completely out. That's just because, and I think there, in the context of there has to be an SEC team in the field if there's an undefeated or one-loss SEC team. Because the SEC is the best conference in America. Mm-hmm. And the committee is not going to come out and say, well, we just didn't think the SEC was that good. When the rest of their rankings are going to have Mississippi up high, Missouri up high, LSU is going to be in the top 15. You're going to have 5 or 6 SEC teams in the top 15. And you're going to tell me that the team that it's just one way or the other, the SEC is going to have a team in the field. And for me, that's more likely than not going to be Georgia no matter what.
Okay. Do we got some are we good on the super chats and everything? Catch, do you want to do a quick break real quick, or do you want to keep it, or do you want to keep going?
I'm good. Let's keep going.
All right. So all right, let's this is fascinating. All right, let's talk about Texas versus Oklahoma State. Okay, so we do have that game upcoming this weekend. Obviously, Texas goes out, they handle their business, the way they need to do against Tech. Catch, I know you watched Oklahoma State and you've seen them this year. The people will talk about Gundy and his history of success against this Texas team, and I was talking about this beforehand. I don't think Oklahoma State's really that good of a team. And so, yeah, to me, it is a team, like you said, got smoked by UCF. They also have another loss. I mean, they beat Oklahoma somehow, some way. But this is a game that we look at and we say to ourselves, if Texas shows up and they bring their A game, this is a smoke fest, right?
It would be a disastrous loss because if they play Oklahoma and you lose to Oklahoma again, Oklahoma's just better than you, I guess. They beat you twice. To play Oklahoma State, they're not better. This is a team that is a one-trick pony on offense. Now, look, it's a hell of a pony, right? I have a lot of respect for Ollie Gordon. He is probably the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. But that's who they are. That is who they are. That is all they really do. And they'll be asked to do that into the teeth of one of the nation's best run defenses. They are not good in the passing game. Their quarterback, of the 12 quarterbacks in the Big 12 that are eligible to be ranked in the passing efficiency standings, they have number 12. Their guy has a 119.5 season efficiency rating. And if you're wondering, 119, Catch, I don't really understand the numbers. What does it mean to have a 119? It means you're 4 points below Case McCoy's career passing efficiency. Now, we know Case was capable on any given days, but we also know that there's no world in which Texas fans would ever want Case McCoy starting at quarterback for them because it would mean you're not elite. Their quarterback play is sketchy. Their defense is 10th in the Big 12 against the run. They allow like 175 yards a game against the run. Like Texas, this should be like a 200-yard game. They rank even worse in pass defense. They're 12th in the Big 12 in pass defense. 10th in run defense, 12th in pass defense. And oh, yes, they did lose by a combined 68 points to what? South Alabama and Central Florida. Literally in the last month, they've lost 45-3 to Central Florida. Texas should beat the shit out of this team. Now, They should beat the shit out of Houston, and they should have beat the shit out of a few other teams, right? But they should definitely do that this weekend. All you need to do is win by 1, but this is a very flawed Oklahoma State team.
Yeah, I would tend to, agree, with that. And I got another hot take for you as well. But I would tend to agree with you as relates to the Oklahoma State. And again, the Texas team that we saw show up on Friday. We know that they're capable of those things. But to your point, as far as everything Oklahoma is concerned, like the big thing for me is what you said. The one thing that Oklahoma State does well is they run the ball. One thing this Texas defense does well, they stop the run. And so if that's all you got, that's it. Like you're dead man walking. You're attempting to run against this defense has proven to be futile for just about everybody that has gone against it. I don't know. This is not a team that's given up 100-yard rushers, getting gashed for 120. So now this last guy did pretty decent. But for the most part, catch it, kind of is what it is as far as this is concerned. I 100% get you on that. There will be people, though, catch that will say, hey, man, Gundy, though. and they'll remember it's the PTSD thing that you and I have talked about prior to this season, which is, things have happened so much in the past that sometimes Texas fans are like, I don't know. I'm not quite sure I can say it yet. They were still like, yeah, Tech happened last year. And you're telling yourself like, no, this is a better team. Is there any Gundy mystique / he could pull a rabbit out of his hat because he's just Mike Gundy and he just has had success over Texas in the past?
Sure. And I also think maybe even more so than that, this is still a Texas team that while they've won all their games this year, they've been dragged down to the opponent's level a few times. You think back to, people will point out that in the Houston game that Ewers got hurt, early enough in that game that like it somehow affects the outcome, and it's fair. But Texas went, I think, over 42 minutes without scoring in that game at one point, or scoring a touchdown in that game. And that included Quinn Ewers, like a big chunk of that. Like this has been a team that on occasion, certainly not last weekend, but on occasion, they've hit some offensive ruts in the middle of games. So I think the worry is, for me, would be less Gundy and more Texas not playing to the level that they need to. There's as good of a chance that Texas wins this game by 4 touchdowns as there is that Oklahoma State keeps it within 1. But, that doesn't mean I can be completely dismissive of the idea that Texas could come in, feel a little bit of pressure, turn the ball over a couple of times, maybe slow down in the second quarter with a lead, and then suddenly Oklahoma State slowly we've seen that game script enough that we should know it's certainly possible. But if Texas plays to a B-level game, Texas's B-level game, I think, should win this game by 10 points. They don't need to be an A- or an A or an A+. If they play a B, they'll beat this team by double digits. If they start going below that and they play a C-level game, they're asking for trouble.
Super chats come in, so let me knock some of these out. Dartboard says, I guess this is better for a question for you. There's a 2005, looks like Colorado Big 12 champion score for Texas move any needles for the playoffs?
Maybe. I mean, look, if you beat Oklahoma State on Saturday 70-3, people will notice. Like, that would get people to notice. Yes. And look, you're never going to play Oklahoma State again. Style points could help. I think if you get an opportunity, you can't be like, you have to be at least as aggressive in the fourth quarter on Saturday with a big lead as you were against Texas Tech on Friday. Like, you need to throw the ball. You need to score touchdowns. You need to try to do everything you can to leave an impression in the committee's minds. End the season with like 57-7 and 54-10. And I think at that point, you've closed the season as well as you can.
Catch, I got a question for you. And thank you, Dartbar, for the super chat. I have a question for you. And I think it goes great with this Overreaction Monday theme and show of today. Catch, there's a poll on Orange Bloods right now. And I hopped in there. I voiced my opinion. I got slightly shouted down. And then I just said, all right, well, I've just decided I had to do other things over the weekend. There's a poll right now about Sark and a contract extension. In catch, 72.2% of the people who voted on this poll on Orange Bloods believe that Sark should get a contract extension after the end of this season. 48.9% believe that he should be rewarded with a top 10 contract. Now, in 23.3% believe he should be in the top 5. So the consensus is 72 says he should get a contract extension, period. Most just say top 10, but there's a percentage of that they say top 5. Sark's under contract until 2026. Now, I'm going to tell you where my take was on this one, and I want to see where you're at. I feel like Texas has overreacted to at least twice since I've been here to coaches doing their job. And they always say it's the expectation. When you take the job at Texas, you're expected to win. You're expected to compete for conference titles, and you're expected to compete for national titles. And when it finally does happen, they go, oh my God, it happened. Give him more. Give him more. Like, we saw it happen after Shaka's first year, right? Shaka has one good season. They're like, tack on some more years to the guy. And it ended up being a thing that they were saying, man, probably shouldn't have happened. So Tom Herman had one good season, and then they said, you look at him and got to the Sugar Bowl, and he tacked on some more years and some more money. I am of the belief that he's doing what he was hired to do. There's no need to overreact. See what happens going into the SEC next season. They're going to lose a lot of bodies going into next year. And then after 2024, when he's still got 2 more years left on his contract, then sure. But we know, Catch, you and I already got our mental list of the guys that this team could potentially lose going into next year. And it's going to be potentially a lot of significant guys. I'm you're doing your job. You're doing great. Doing one more year. But I want to see where you are as far as this conversation goes.
I think you're right. There's a but that I'm about to follow it up with. But I want to acknowledge that you ain't wrong, okay? I would say Texas has 2 problems. One, they've been paying Sarkisian with a WIC card for like the last 3 seasons. On the national level, he's incredibly underpaid. I mean, he's not making 6 right now, which means Texas, for all of the recruiting classes that he's brought in and now for this year's success, they've been getting quite a deal for less than $6 million a year. They're getting ready to move in to a conference where Lane Kiffin makes $9 million a year. Josh Heupel at Tennessee makes $9 million a year. Mark Stoops at Kentucky makes more than $9 million a year. Jimbo was making $9 million before he got fired. Brian Kelly's making almost $10 million. Kirby's making almost 11. And of course, Nick's making like 11.5. They are going to be playing ball in a conference where the top half of the league pays their coaches $9 million a year. Like that's the going rate. So I think they're going to have to give him more money. I think, or if you're Texas, here's what I would do if I was Texas. I'd bump him up to 9, and I'd add a year to his deal so that moving forward, he's got 4 years left on his deal, and he's paid like his peers in the SEC. Now, I think his agent would be doing a terrible job,
of course,
if he didn't say, wait a minute, Mel Tucker was making $10 million at Michigan State.
Yes.
Show us the money. And I think where you've got to be careful if you're Texas, I think you want to – it's a lose-lose because you have to pay him more money. I think you're right, though. I think this year he's meeting the expectations that were set for him when he was hired, right? This is where they're supposed to be. So, but he is they got to give him more money. I would be careful about giving him more years until I see a second season. So I'd throw him a year. And I say, well, you got 4 years. You've got almost, let's say, between 36 and 40 million on your deal. You're paid like your peers. If you do it again, we'll make a handshake agreement that will put together an entirely new deal if we're in the playoff next year. But I understand you being a little pragmatic about this.
Yeah, I just hear like this is the expectation. And then they sure don't act like it's the expectation when it finally does happen. Like they act like it's the anomaly. Like, I cannot believe this happened. I'm so excited. Like,
you ever known a guy that hadn't gotten laid in a long time?
Oh, yeah.
The lengths that they will go to get laid is long. And then once they get it,
yeah. Yes,
they're ready to get married. This is the best experience of my life. I want it forever. Where do I sign up? Texas hasn't won a conference championship in 14 years. That is college football's version of getting laid. So don't be shocked when they act like the guy that hasn't been laid in a long ass time. He's going to be like, where do I get signed up? How big of a ring do you want? And the thing is, we know this about Texas because we've seen it from them in the past.
JD raises his hand.
So, you know.
But you know what, Catch? The thing is, but Texas talks like that guy who's like, oh man, this is just what I do though. Like this is just me all day long. Like I ain't sweating on nobody. Like, hey, you gonna come to me, you better come correct. And then it does happen, and you ain't heard from him in like 2 months, 3 months.
He's saying I love you, like after 2 weeks. I love you.
But he before that, he was like the business ain't snip but hoes it. Like he's slinging all these lyrics like, hey man, I ain't thinking about no women like that. Now
Texas is just much more likely to tell Steve Sarkisian they love him and they want to be with him forever than they are to be like, yo, that's cool, but like that's what we expect around here.
You gave that analogy would be gold. All right, let me ask you one more thing. I gotta ask this though. So this weekend was a fascinating weekend as we got to watch with our popcorn what was going on in College Station. And this is one of those that this is where I do appreciate Sark, that you and I aren't having to worry about the major head coaching searches. I'm sure we'll hear the rumors like the Jeff Banks rumor. We'll hear rumors about guys someone may kick a tire on the guy, but at the end of the day, we didn't have to deal with the Aggies had to deal with. It looked like they had a coach, and then it looked like there was just a revolt that said, you ain't hiring this coach at all. And then it looks like they had to go to plan B. from afar, I just want to get your opinion on this whole Elko situation and the Elko hire. And because I'll say this, my thing is I want to get your opinion. Was I wrote this in my column. I didn't think there was any way Texas A&M fired a coach without having a plan. I was like, that doesn't happen. Like, no, like there's no way they fired a coach and didn't know who to their next plan. Like, surely there's some strategy behind this. And I realized I gave the Aggies way too much credit. Like, I realized this weekend, oh, so this is what you guys say when you make fun of A&M. Like, I finally understand it. I'm just curious, you watching it, one, from a reporting perspective, and then everything that just unfolded.
I think they hired a perfectly fine coach. I think the issue that I have with it is, and I guess I have multiple issues, and I know we're up against it from a time standpoint, so I'll just try to spit it out fast. You can't spend $76 million in a buyout and then commit, another 50 to a new coach, and at least 50 to a new coach and the staff, coordinators. You can't spend $130 or $140 million and not come away with a guarantee on the box. And they just hired a guy who's like 9 and whatever. He's 16-9. I don't know. He's won one game in his career against a top 25 team. And I think that was Clemson early in the season when Clemson was dog shit. Like, he ain't done nothing, but he's a good coach. He's a good coach. You also can't do all of the things that they did and then hire a coach and the number one, the thing about him that makes the hire the thing that you decided to do was that he gets you. What the fuck does that mean? He gets you. Nick, do you think Nick Saban gets the people at Alabama? He doesn't. He thinks they're freaks. But you know what? He can win a lot of ball games at Alabama. And they support him the way he usually wants to get support. But he doesn't get those fans. He's not hanging out with Alabama fans. It matters that he's the coach at Alabama because he's great, not because he can go down to the local barbershop and sit with Alabama fans and yuck it up with them comfortably. This idea that Mike Elko got the job and that people are excited because he gets us. Man, that you are too weird and too complicated if you have to hire a coach and his number one asset is, well, he understands us. Huh? They did not do enough. They did not look, when Matt Campbell's name started getting mentioned a little bit yesterday on War, I was like, well, that's not splashy, but you know what? He's a damn good coach. I was like, what would Matt Campbell look like with all of the resources that he doesn't have at Iowa State? And I could talk myself into, that's a pretty damn good hire. Like, the NFL was sniffing around Matt Campbell at one point.
Yeah.
Anybody trying to hire Mike Elko?
No.
Hired somebody that nobody else in the SEC would hire. If Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, you name it, if they opened up tomorrow, Mike Elko wouldn't be one of the guys that they'd be targeting. So you just spent a bunch of money on a guy that you bid against yourself. And they hired a good coach, and he'll probably do a good job. Is good the barometer, though? Is that the bar? I would be wildly disappointed if I was an Aggie on Saturday morning. Ryan Day's name was being mentioned. Dabo Swinney's name was being mentioned. The next day, Matt Campbell's name is being mentioned. And you go hire the 7-5 Duke coach because he gets you. All right. Well, good luck with that.
Jeff Lebby from Oklahoma, he takes the job at Mississippi State. First of all, he's OC. You got to take the job. It's a hard place to win. I mean, I feel like that's a place where most careers just go to die. I mean, you're stuck there in the middle of SEC country, and everybody just picks and chooses what they want from your state. You're left with the leftovers, and if you're there, you're the secondary school to Ole Miss at that point, right? So it's just tough to win. But is Lebby a loss for OU for you, Catch?
Sure, he's solid at his job. I think he's a horrible human being. I kind of think he's a piece of shit. He knew what happened at Baylor. He's good. Is he good enough to be a head coach in the SEC based on what we've seen so far? I don't know about all that. He'll be fired in 4 years. He'll go back to being a coordinator. I don't expect that to work out.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I feel Mississippi State to me is a place where your career probably is just going to go to die at that point.
I think Oklahoma, though, the turnover there doesn't help because this will be now their third. We did this a lot at Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, okay, a senior next year at Oklahoma will have his third offensive coordinator in 4 years, and it's less than ideal. So I think that's a baby win for Texas.
Last of the little kind of the baby news from over the weekend, Holgorsen out at Houston, which I never thought he should be in because I was never impressed with him at West Virginia. Does this open the door for my man Jeff Traylor to finally get the big time job? Is this it for him?
I would say yes, and I think in the process, Houston might make a better head coaching hire than A&M did.
Well, then there's that.
I mean, they're not wildly different. So, so if you're Houston and you could get Traylor, and the lack of money at UTSA right now, I think is really shining through. They're talking about giving him a $2 million commitment, not for him, but for his assistant coaches, for recruiting, for I don't know. $2 million doesn't go very far in 2020. That buys you 2 players in the portal.
Yes.
And so if I'm Traylor, I make the move. You're in the Big 12. It's a place you can win at. Texas and Oklahoma out of the Big 12. Houston starts recruiting the Houston area and the Golden Triangle, and I think Traylor would do that with his East Texas ties. I think that you'd see them recruit East Texas, Houston, Golden Triangle, and I don't think they'd have to really go anywhere other than that for a lot of what they do. I think that's a place he could win at, and I think then get the big job beyond that.
He's going for the corner once to lay a joke before we get out of here. He wants to know who OU is playing this weekend. I joked, Catch, that if anybody from OU needs any good San Antonio recommendations, I've got them covered for the Alamo Bowl. Like I know I've been there. I can tell you where to go. Whether it's down by the river walk, whether you want to go to the Rim, like all the different places, the Rustic, nice spot that you might want to hit while you're there. Good place to have a spot. So yes, OU's not playing anyone this weekend. They will be watching. Which, by the way, I would have liked to see the rematch, but nonetheless, there's that. There's 2 things I want to do, Aaron, before we get out of here. The first thing is I want to remind everybody about the 988 thing. So raising money, been growing out the mustache for the month of November for 988. So if you are interested in helping, 988 is a suicide prevention hotline. So Aaron, can you also drop the link in the chat for those who don't pull out their phone and don't want to get in trouble at work, but can just click on it. But 988 is there to help people. You'll if you donate, for those who've been looking to donate, it will go to Vibrant Emotional Health, which is the fundraising chair for them, but they offer trained counselors, people dealing with mental health crises, substance abuse crises, all that. 988. You can text it if you're going through something, whether it's you or a friend of yours. And then, of course, it's 988lifeline.org as well. Tomorrow, by the way, will be Giving Tuesday, and I'll be promoting that a lot more here on the show. But no, we're getting started on it early this week. So there'll be 988. And then the very last thing as we transition will be a reminder about Rogue Shop. The rogueshop.com. Use that promo code orangebloods.com. Just orangebloods for the Rogue Shop. Just Rogue, and then and get your discount as well. Catch very last thing, and then I'll let you go. And then, by the way, Opinion Sports Show. I did mention I made a bet with Opinion Sports Show. Mentioned you earlier that he lost a bet with me. Catch. I bet him that Texas would beat OU in a rematch. And then what we had to say, but I had to ask, like, hey, if one of the teams don't get here. And he said, well, then the other person wins. And to his credit, after the Oklahoma State game, he reached out and said, "What's your Venmo?" So we bet a bottle, and so I will be having a bottle this weekend on the Opinion Sports Show. So, but to his credit, so far he's asked about paying up, and I expect him to be a person. I'm not worried about it because he reached out, so clearly he plans to play. So I'm not worried about it. So, but salute to him.
Can I do 3 quick things?
Yeah, go for it.
Number 1, Aaron, do you have the Orange Bloods offer that's still up through today? All right, guys, it's real simple. If you and this goes into one of the other things. I made sure to make my article, my 10 thoughts from the weekend, along with Anwar's Sunday Pulpit. You can get like the opening. If you never get a chance to read Anwar, go check out the Sunday Pulpit on the front page of orangebloods.com. Inside of that, you'll see the special offer that ends today. It's an annual subscription, 75% off. It's that simple. We're basically giving you orangebloods.com for a year at 75% off. It basically means you're paying like $25. Go click on the Sunday Pulpit, read Anwar, go check out my 10 thoughts from the weekend. Anwar, you can tweet that article out. It won't send people to the message board. It's actually an article that will have the main portion of your column this past week. It also will have the offer inside. So if anybody wants to check out Orange Bloods, they can. It's right there on the front page. You can check out both of what we've written in the last 24 hours there. And then finally, I was just going to say, a week ago when I said, hey, I want to give you an opinion on the mustache. And you were like, Catch, don't you fucking say anything rude about my mustache. Those will be fighting words. Don't you dare insult me. This is an important cause. And like, you don't know what you're speaking against if you say anything bad about the mustache. I just want to say, I kind of love the mustache. And it's working here too. Like it's growing into like potentially I could see you doing a lot of things with the facial hair. It is surprisingly working really well for you. I don't know how the women feel about the mustache, right? So at the end of the day, if you had a couple of women say, I don't like it, you probably shave the damn thing off. But from my perspective,
Chris,
I think it's working for you.
You know what's crazy? Like my girl likes it, and I'm like, I prefer to have it shaved. So I'm doing for November, right? The last day is Thursday, and then the Friday we head into it. So it's really, I have a choice to make over the next 4 days. Shall it stay? You'll know come Friday morning if it stays or not. So I'm not.
Would it be a jinx to shave it before the?
Oh, don't do that! Oh, come on! No, why did you do that? Why did you put that on me?
At least Saturday.
No,
I'm put that on me. If you shave that damn thing on Friday, look, you're talking about people who made me wear the same shirt every Friday because they thought it was lucky. they will look for reasons to blame us.
You
They'll
just gave them
themselves-
one. Now you literally just gave them one.
I didn't give them anything.
They
were already going to do it.
Put it out there.
They're going to be like, Anwar, we've been undefeated since you started growing the mustache. You can't shave it. I'm just telling you, you can shave it after Saturday. Don't you dare shave that thing on Friday.
That is so unfair. That is so unfair. That is so. Wait a second. I started
good. Don't complain about it. That's what I'm telling you.
They didn't. Let me see. Hold on. They barely beat.
People are saying it in the chat. No,
that's so unfair.
South End Zone Queen. It's the lucky stash. You think I just did you a disservice? I've made you aware of what the people will think.
Now you can't put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
It's already on you.
On me. Now I can't shave it. These people
I'm letting you know what would happen if you shaved it and something bad happened.
Thinking that until you said it. There wasn't a single person.
They were thinking it. They were thinking it. They were thinking it. I said, I'm a man of the people. And the people were already thinking it. I did you a favor by giving you a heads up.
Oh, Jesus. All right. Well, now I can't. Well, then I guess I got to keep it over the weekend because now everyone's going to, God forbid, I was like, well, it's just time to shave. November's over. That was a good cause, so on and so forth. And then I show up. First of all, now I'm supposed to hang out with everybody at this Texas Live on Friday. So then people will get, I can't even avoid anyone. They're going to be mad. And then, yes, now you know what's going to happen now. They're going to make the playoffs. And then now everyone's going to be like, you can never shave this thing again. Like,
see, look, Tom says it. Like, look at the flood of, you think these flood of comments would be there if you shaved?
You just, you know how little it takes for sports fans to apply a jinx? Like, now they're going to look at it. They're going to say, well, let's see. He started growing it at the very last week of October, and so we beat BYU 35-6. Then we pulled out Kansas State, we pulled out TCU, we beat Iowa State. Like, look at this 5 wins that he's had since he started growing it out.
Look what South End Queen says.
What does she
go
say?
Against all of our mental health if you shave that lucky stash.
I don't know how I got roped into this. Fine. Well, guess.
No, you can't do that, South. One way or the other, the job will be done when the season is over.
Listen, you guys will. Okay, so what if they don't make? We got to set parameters here. Okay, we got to set parameters. What? See that piece? Now that is actually very hilarious. Wait a second. So
look, South End Zone Queen is like, wants to make sure she knows this is about you taking care of the people's mental health.
Well, I have to. I'm devoting the whole month of November to mental health awareness, and so now I have to do. Okay, all right, but let's make a deal. Can we make a deal here? If Texas doesn't make the CFP, then I can shave it, because at that point we're not keeping it for a Cotton Bowl win. Okay, correct. Like that's so. Let's so it will stay through.
But what if they do make the playoffs?
Well, then I have to keep it because Florida State would have lost, and then something would have, maybe Georgia beats Alabama. And then all of a sudden Texas is in. And so like now, no, I can't live with that pressure. You know the pressure I would face? I feel pressure now. And there's nothing on the line. It's not, I don't grow facial hair. Do you realize this is probably the longest I've tried to grow facial hair? And I can't, like, in the years, like I don't grow it. So, well, there you go. I guess it stays.
No, I think you have a deal. I think we have a deal.
Okay, we have the deal.
If they don't make the playoff, there ain't nothing lucky about the stash.
Yeah, then it's just it is what it is. I mean, are you bringing out your red shirt on Saturday?
About National Signing Day too.
No. I don't. The stash doesn't apply to recruits. There has not been one person who's committed. Arch Manning committed when I didn't have a stash. Like Malik Muhammad committed when I didn't have a stash.
Guys, when it gets to be recruiting, we send Onward away on vacation.
Yes. That's
the luck, right? Onward, you came home from vacation this summer.
Yeah.
Right after a time where it's turned into a traditional time of success for Texas in recruiting. And you were like, me vacationing was clearly the lucky piece of Texas. So you know what? Yes, this is payback. This is payback. The stash. A little bit of pressure going into this week.
The last 2 years when I've gone on vacation, and even though I don't appreciate you pointing out the timing, the last 2 years, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's in June, right? Or July, I forget when I go. But it doesn't matter. It just knows that Texas gets a boatload of 5 stars whenever I go on vacation. The last 2 years have been hot. And so I don't know how this stash has somehow returned to hot. Does this mean today, and I know I need to run, does it mean that Sark is going to give me mad love when I start asking him questions today? Or we're going to have Sarky, kind of snarky Sark today? What do you think?
What are you going to ask him? I'll let you know. There's nothing.
There's nothing. The only thing hasn't been.
There's no snark to ask.
Nah. Well, I mean, there's people in our media corps who will find something negative to point out. See, because this is what they don't get. Sark shows up on Monday after a win, and he's expecting the "Why is your team so good?" questions, right? And so when someone hits him with the "But why are you struggling in your red zone and why you're not scoring?" He's kind of like, "Are you serious right now? Are you mother serious? Does this?" And then that's when he gets like really? Well, did you know this or did that? It's typically, one person that does it. I'm just not naming his name. He may or may not have worked here previously. But he usually annoys him, right?
Ask him a Jeff Banks question today.
I heard Jeff's a rumor of a candidate. Are you asking me what was reported, or are you asking me if he's a candidate?
Yes. The thing is, though, he might be like, "Onward, thank you very much for asking," because of the mustache. Say, "Thank you for asking that question. That's a good question, Onward. You get to have another." I love it when my guys on my staff interview for other jobs and have a chance to move up in the world. It's a sign of a healthy program. It means we're doing something right over here. When other schools want our coaches, he might name check his entire staff at that point, all because you gave him a platform to do so. I think you're on a hot streak. I don't think you can do wrong.
Well, I think I can do wrong, but we are going into rumor season, right? So that's because I was honestly. There's not a lot to ask him out. I mean, do you really want to break down of Oklahoma State? You don't really care. I mean, there's the only thing you want is, I'll see what he says about Malik and what I reported over the weekend, right? That'll be, but I don't think there's much meat left on that bone. There's not really a ton out there that you would say, we've already asked him why he's successful. I think we get it. Quinn's doing what he does. It's not a lot of third down defense. I mean,
I think the portal is a really interesting question just because we're closer to it.
Yeah.
And I had someone over the weekend tell me that they already have a pretty good idea. They've had players reach out to them and say, "I'm going to be in the portal." So I wonder if there's positions that he has in mind. Does he need to wait until the roster is fully set? Can he even do that? I don't know. I'm just curious. And he might not give anything out at all. I'm just curious if he would say something like, "Yeah, we know that we need to get a defensive tackle or two because of the guys that we're losing." I don't know. I'm curious what he would fess up to with regards to needs, expectations. I thought he was really honest and like insightful a week ago when he got asked the portal question, when I otherwise thought he might have been chippy, no pun intended.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He gave a pretty insightful answer.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because the portal opens up on the 4th. But then he is preparing for championship week. So like there probably is a balance of like, how do you can't ignore it. You can't just say like, well, I'll just wait until Sunday to have the conversation, right?
And he said that last week, like it's, but you know what? It's a good problem to have. These are the things that great programs go through. It's like there aren't many negatives to being great in college football. The timing of this is one of the few things. Hey, let's feel sorry for all the teams in the championship games this weekend.
Yeah.
It's a little more complicated than the rest of us. Yeah, those are
first world
rich people problems.
First world problems. When if that's what's happening, your coaches, somebody may want to take someone from your coaching staff. I mean, like all those kind of things, which I've covered this team long enough where I remember no one would want anybody from these coaching staffs. There ain't nobody and no rumors. So there is that. All right, Catch. Let me get the hell out of here. Let me get from Cedar Park down to UT. For Jeff Ketchum, from a man Aaron, who's been producing in the background. Make sure you check out Jeff here, House Divided, from noon till 3. He'll have tons of hot takes that are going on today. They'll have tons of stuff. And he'll bring in Chad. We'll talk about the Aggies. We'll talk about Texas, like all those kind of things. If you made it this far, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have not, make sure you also check out Football with Friends today at 3:30. That will be my main man Alex Dunlap. We'll be doing the show from 3:30 to 5:30. And Aaron, do we got the show tonight? The Outsiders. So the Outsiders are tonight at 9 o'clock. And they should have much to discuss. So make sure you check everything out. Thank you for checking in from Overreaction, for Richard and the Rogue Shop and everything like that. Use that promo code OrangeBuds. Oh, sign up for OB as well, as Ketch said. Listen, let me say this. If you're looking for a present for yourself, by the way, or looking for a Texas fan in your life, and you think to yourself, I do not know what to get that person, gift them Orange Bloods for a year. They will absolutely enjoy it. Unique gift. Catch just hopped off. So get themselves unique gift for you, whether it's you for yourself. And Orange Bloods, just so you know, it's not just like a message board. It's not, that simplifies it. It's a community. It's not a message board per se. It's a community where you discuss all kinds of different things in life. Just think of a much better Facebook. A much better Facebook. Facebook of everything on orangebloods.com. All right, I got to get some Cedar Park down to UT and not speed. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Remember what I say, live each day like it was your last, because one day it will be. Y'all take care. Yes, I will protect